Hello and welcome. So, this is one of my 60 inspiring conversations, and I am really delighted today to have with my guest, the lovely Michelle McCartan. I am lucky that she lives relatively close to me in North Devon. So, we have met physically. We do know that we are both fully proper human beings. I mean, sometimes, people are way across the other side of the world, and you think they only have this bit of a body. You have no idea whether they have legs. But so Michelle and I have met in person. We do know each other not well, but relatively well. So yes, I am delighted to be having this conversation with you. Do you want to tell us a little bit, Michelle, about yourself and what it is you do out in the world? How you share and your spiritual understanding, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about you, and let's see where this goes.
Yeah, oh, thank you, Debs, for asking me to be part of this birthday celebration. I think it's such a lovely idea, and there's never a bad reason to catch up for a conversation, but this is a really good one, so I love it. So who am I? So you're right, I'm in North Devon. I guess if I had to describe myself, I would say I'm an explorer of the human experience. I think that kind of sums it up really. And that's been from a really young age. I've just had this fascination, curiosity in human behavior, in this experience of being a human being. So without boring you on the long journey, I guess it's been one that's just become increasingly obvious. I guess we trace the breadcrumbs backwards in some ways, and we can
Mm,
see the full picture. And for me, after sort of studying anthropology and psychology at university, which really were human behaviour at its kind of heart, went into a career in HR management, and really interesting experiences of just looking at people in the corporate world. A people watcher,
I was
really.
going to say, people watching is such fun, isn't it? In any environment, when you people watch it, yeah, there's some great fun to be had there.
Yeah, and so much to be learned from any interaction that we
Yeah.
have. So, kind of a career in HR, UK, Australia, and then really saw that one-to-one space of deeply diving in with people was a real passion of mine. And so, coach training, all that sort of stuff, and then had the opportunity to work as a client director for a leadership consultancy, heading up their Asia Pacific branch, and yeah, just travelled to work with all these amazing different coaching teams, and really seeing the universality of this experience,
Mm.
being a human. So really blessed in that. And I guess fast forward through all of that, come out the other side to today. I run a couple of businesses. One is a business called Pure Potential, where I work with a co-pilot on the program, which is a deep exploration for leaders into really understanding their incredible human design, and how that design can be, when understood, really optimized, and we can go
Mm.
way in the world, in a freer, more flow based manner. And then I also work, so that's with individuals and teams, and then I work personally through my own business, with a range of clients more globally, on a one-to-one basis. So I love this world of exploring with people, and really I'm learning more about myself every day. So that's the ultimate opportunity for us as human beings to see more, and in the process do that with other people. I think there's nothing more joyful than doing life with people.
Yeah, I definitely think you can't genuinely get into um, a coaching type conversation with someone um, and not learn for yourself, about we're all a reflection of each other in some sense. Like you said, yeah, when wherever we go, however far away we go, you can see the universe. We are all the same there, or certainly there is a level on which we are all the same, and are basically what we want to feel: joyful, happy, connected. That's true for all of us, isn't it? And then it is just, okay, what do we understand about ourselves and this world that we live in that makes sense to us for how we do that? And because I can look back over my life and think whether I was doing something that now I'm like, what the heck were you thinking? Or, yeah, that was pretty good. It was like in that moment that made sense to me. It felt in some way that was going to move me towards more peace of mind, more connection, more love, whatever. Even if with hindsight, with more understanding, I can see how cockeyed that maybe was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the joy, because we're always there. Every moment is an opportunity to unlearn some of that. What looked to be true in that moment. I guess if we see the fluid nature of it, and I think that's the joy, to really kind of get so curious that we see that nothing is static, that we really have this kind of Play-Doh available to us all the time in the way that we interact in the world. And I think that then opens up possibilities in ways that they just don't look like they're there when things look really locked and solid and fixed.
yeah, it is. So one of the questions that I really love to ask, which seems kind of pertinent in this moment with what this talking, what would be, like, having been on the journey that you've described, what would be one thing if you could go back to your younger self? What would be one thing that you would like to share with her that you think actually that would probably make a difference to the me that I was then if I'd have known that then? What one thing would you share with your younger self?
Beautiful question. I mean, I guess that there's sharing and then there's believing, isn't there? I
Yes.
kind of sit in there and go, well, could I say this to her, and what would she think about it? I don't know. But I think probably this sense of, true sense of, we are always okay. Really, really, really seeing that, because it feels a very superficial kind of throwaway line, and we see it banded around a lot. We see the opposite of it banded around a lot. I'm not enough, or I'm broken. All the kind of words out there, but truly to see that at a very profound level, that I really see it as this kind of, the solid ground that we are stood on, no matter the form, the external world that comes our way, the waves that don't stop, that always are flowing. But actually to see beneath that who I really am, and that is utter okayness. That is more than okayness. That is a constant. And I think it really didn't feel like that. I know it didn't feel like as a child, and it felt, a lot of the time like, I was far from okay, and I was far from complete and whole, and that there was absolutely something very disconnecting from me and the world. And I think when we see the okayness in ourselves, and we have a true, profound appreciation of that, a lived appreciation of that, then we no longer feel like we're separate from the world. I think we see the world and ourselves as just so intrinsically connected, or one. I think that's such a different place to live from. Would she have got that? She probably would have looked at me and went, "What the?" But I would say, Debs, that when I was young, so my parents brought me up Catholic, and so there was something. I knew there was
Yeah.
something invisible. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand the whole kind of sort of rigor and tradition associated with Catholicism. But
Mm.
going to church, there was something that settled. There was something that I could connect with that didn't feel like anything that I experienced outside of that settled place. So I knew there was something. I didn't have the words or the sense of what that was. So
Mm.
maybe there's more hope for that girl.
I think there's a couple of things there. I think it's interesting to kind of look back when you consider that question, what would I tell my younger self? you kind of consider the bit that felt like it was maybe missing for you. It was like, yeah, I just didn't realize that, did I? And I think that highlights maybe a difference that we feel once we see that. Absolutely. So I think it's great. And I loved the way you answered it. That was really, really beautiful. And very much for me, one of the reasons that I'm doing the build on the house is building this house and doing what I'm doing, and the way that I'm doing it is because of that understanding of that foundation, and to almost kind of say, right, what that foundation is there, this. So, and you work with people, you talk to people, you go out and sort of say you are always okay no matter what. And I know for me, one of the things is I like to walk my talk. And so it is, all right, do something that then potentially, I mean, I think life potentially holds that it will throw stuff at you. But it's like, yeah, put yourself in a position where potentially things will come up, and look for yourself. You know that okayness exists and it's there. So do it from that foundation. And I think, yeah, that's what I heard in what you were saying. It's kind of like the difference is it's a wing and a prayer. And then we kind of get, actually, I know that is there. And so if I trust in that and create out in the world without all the kind of, oh, well, I better be careful of this and I better mind this, because we don't know that is there. It does make a huge difference, doesn't it?
It's light and day, isn't it, really? I think that although nothing externally changes, everything internally changes. So we don't need to be scared of what life throws our way. In that way, we don't have to try and change, manage, control, manipulate. That's the exhaustion. That's the never-ending treadmill or the hamster wheel or whatever it is. But when that's seen for what it really is, the only place to really look is just in such a different direction. There's an inner gaze that feels so different to having to be in that busy world of changing all the time, and that absolutely was my world. So it is absolutely night and day. But if an external observer looked at the externals in your world, they might not see that much difference, and that's fascinating, really.
Yeah.
That we can have such a different experience of something, and that something doesn't need to change. Very cool.
Yeah. But there was definitely something in when you were saying that. It was the whole, when you said something about we don't need to manage, control, manipulate. That's sort of key, isn't it? When we realize, it's not on me in that way. I think so. I think we begin to, you really know that you're having insights and something is different, whatever is going on out here. And like you say, sometimes I can see sometimes what I physically do out in the world looks zero different. And I know, I know that you also know Rani Bora, Dr. Rani Bora, is one of the speakers at our conference. And I know I saw a huge shift in her that I saw kind of put words onto that. It is like, it's not so much what you are doing, it is who is doing it. And that's that shift, isn't it? When we are doing this from a need to, oh, I need to make sure Michelle likes me. It's like, I'm going to invite her to be a guest on my show, and then I'm going to do it like this so that Michelle likes me. It's a whole different, and potentially how this conversation could have come about would have been exactly the same, rather than coming back, oh yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Let's do that and see if it happens or not. But when we're in that manipulation, control, there is something there that is night and day different, isn't it?
And it's interesting, Debs, because it kind of sounds a bit Machiavellian. It sounds a bit like look, how can I strategic, like it feels very like there's a sort of negative energy to make that happen. It's like there's just no awareness of it. It's just the obvious
Totally.
of
Yeah.
that's what I need to do because I have this sense of needing to maintain my okayness. So I've got to
Yeah.
do all these things, and so
Yes.
it's really cool to have that kind of compassion around it, isn't it, for ourselves when we know, I mean, I know how much I try to control and manage and whatever, not having a clue what I was really doing.
Yeah.
And it's like you're gifted a different language and a different kind of pair of glasses to see everything. And of course, then you just know that no longer makes sense. So all that you learned to be true when that falls away, there's a lot more spaciousness. There's a lot more ability to just show up and get curious. And I think that's the most joyful place to be in, really.
Mm. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but even now, things keep being revealed to me where I notice I am trying to control, manipulate, make happen, whatever. And maybe it's like you say, and it definitely comes from a place of not being aware, not having a realization. And even if I'm sort of aware that I'm doing it, if I am doing it, it is mostly coming from a place of, well, you kind of have to do that, don't you? That sort of, like you say, there's you haven't seen in that particular area that isn't necessary. And for me, definitely the revealing of more and more, oh yeah, that's not on you either. Oh yeah, that's not on you either. Oh yeah, that's not on you either. And I know something that's been an incredible helpful for me, and that is really starting to rely on how I'm feeling. Because
Mm,
when it is in that space, this subtle manipulation, control, whatever it is, when I'm moving into that, I feel it.
yeah.
It doesn't feel, like you said, you talked about a spaciousness and an openness of the
Mm,
room. Yeah, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like this. And if I move into those kinds of being, it's like, yeah, I'm definitely, they are absolutely clues to me that I am taking on things that I have no business doing.
for sure. And my journey, Debs, I don't know if you know this, but I had chronic fatigue after my son was born, and in reality, that came from the absolute seeming need to control, to manage, to get it right, to be a good mum, to
Yeah.
all of those things. I was in the other side of the world. I was in Australia, didn't have family around, so potentially there wasn't that kind of pairs of hands to come in and support. And so when the mind is in that hypervigilant state, that there's just so much that feels at every moment, because the ramifications of not getting it right seem really big. And of course, what happens? The body's blooming exhausted, and just is amazing at telling us that. And so I think that the body, the feelings that we have, are incredible indicators of, are we on the right path, or are we moving in the wrong direction? And I really think of it as like an accordion, just like we're either the expanded accordion and there's space and there's beautiful. I don't know what I've never played an accordion, so it's probably a ridiculous metaphor, but there's a lot of kind of capacity there, and yeah, spaciousness. And then when it feels so contracted, I
Mm.
can't imagine playing an accordion like with my hands like this. It's probably quite hard. But it feels difficult, and that was certainly my experience. It was increasingly difficult, and um, I just wasn't keyed into the feeling state at all. Um,
Mm.
and so, of course, you just keep on going and you override it, and you do more of the thing that's
Yeah.
actually causing
Yeah.
the yeah.
That's the mistake that we make, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh yeah, I need to get it right. I need to do this, and this feeling and this, and I don't think we consciously, it's not a conscious process, but the message that we give ourselves somehow is, if I do it more, if I try harder, if I get up earlier, go to bed later, sort more, wash, you know, have everything perfect. That's the answer.
Yeah.
And the harder we get.
I'm tired. Let me go to bed. Yeah.
In one sense, kind of when you say it, when you actually say that out loud, it's kind of, we can actually see the craziness of that, isn't it? I'm exhausted, so doing more must be the solution.
Mm,
It's like, yeah, how does, and yet, like you say, we don't see it
mm,
until we do. And for me, yeah, it was the same. You know, many areas of my life where I got into trouble, and I felt absolutely that, felt like I was living in a straitjacket,
yeah.
and yet putting more and more on myself to make it better.
Mm,
And it's like, and I think initially the idea, we either get to the point where we stop, like you say, our bodies just kind of go, absolutely not. That's it. We're not doing, this is not working. Don't care what you want. We're not doing this anymore. Or yeah, we have some sort of breakdown in some kind of way
mm,
to stop us continually going in that direction. If we are not keyed in, if we don't listen, if we don't hear that message. But I
mm,
think initially, like you say, it looks so real and it feels so, but this is the job of a mom, my executive, a person who owns that, whatever it is. I have to do this. How can you say stop, don't do it, go in a different direction? I think
yeah.
that is the beauty of insight.
Yeah. That's the bell that rings when it looks like that's how it is. And of course we don't know that till we know that, but when that bell, when there's just that little bit of space and curiosity, to tune into those feelings, to tune into what really is my experience in this moment, the door then starts to open, to that potentially being different, to the invitation to a different experience of exactly the same external, you know, factors, whatever they might be.
Mm-hmm. So no, I wasn't aware that that was what was going on for you, but you shared a little bit about your story. But what would you say has been the biggest thing that has changed for you?
Mm, I mean, everything.
Oh, only everything. Oh, is that all then? Yeah, okay, not much then.
If I really had to define that, because I think I'm not sure there's words to really describe it, because it's a felt experience, but really that felt experience is, there's probably two things I'd say. The felt experience is, from being constantly, um, hypervigilant, constantly on the go, constantly overwhelmed, so that busyness of mind, to the settling, to the peace, to the just the sense of, real stillness. And I think that's profound, and that feels like that's the starting point. And then from there, for me, the big difference is the what seemed to be, the ability, the enhanced ability, sort of like the booster packs were then on, to allow me to go and play and create in the world, in a way that made sense. But without that settling, without that stillness, that felt like that was impossible, because there was so much conditioned thought about, what the going out and doing in the world had to look like. Take all that away through the settling, and then there is no limit on that. So then it's about go and have fun, go and explore, and get curious and play in an expansive way, that where things don't need to mean anything. And then everything, like all the brakes are off and you can just play. And that absolutely has been my experience.
Mm, yeah. And I think that bit, like you say, for me, understanding the principles, understanding my spiritual nature, that has it's a total game changer. And it is, like you say, that's the foundation. And it's like, okay, so given that, and I think that is the bit that is universal to us all. The foundation of this is universal to all of us. And then I think, you know, the beautiful gift of being here and being human and being an individual is then we all have different ideas of what it is we would like to create. And even, you know, sometimes I can see I'd had this idea that I wanted to build my own home for a long time. And I know I was kind of like, you're just crazy. You really don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. And I kept kind of putting it, just sort of batting it away. And I would look at like land, and I would look at different what people have got planning permission, and it was always an interest of mine. And I had, you know, and one day I'd love to build a house, and I'd go, what? Even I sort of thought this is a crazy thing. But having got to the place, like you said that, and it's like, yeah, just play. If I am just playing and this really doesn't matter. And again, then I can see it's the steps, because initially I can see that the fin, I have a real feel for what the finish, not so much details of exactly what it is, but I know the feeling of this finished project. And then it was like, okay, so the first step, you know, you see something that says there's a piece of land in the exact area where I want to do this and everything, and it's just go and have a look at it. And that's the playing out in the world, isn't it? And allow what unfolds next. Because before, like you say, my head would have been crazy with, well, if you go and look, what's this person going to think? You're not in a position to make an offer, you can't do this, you're not going to be able to do this, that isn't going to work out, you're going to look stupid, blah, all of this crazy nonsense. And it's just like, you just feel drawn to go and look at this piece of land. Take everything else off the table. And I think we all have those sort of, you know, the things that you've described, the work that you do, and I'm, you know, I'm sure there are many other things in your life. We all, those tend to be different flavors. You know, we have different ideas of what, and some people might think what you're doing is crazy. Some people might think what I'm doing is crazy. But that's the whole. It's really beautiful to have that foundation and then play in this amazing playground.
There's an infinite or myriad of ways in which human beings can show up, and I think that's phenomenal, and I think that that's the joy of living that flavor, whatever that means, and knowing that that flavor can shift and change all the time.
Yeah, I love that too.
So cool. So there is no end to it, and I think it's just being curious and open to what like, just like you said, you know, going to see what the land looks like. Who knows, like we can have the plan all mapped out in our head and we haven't even seen the land, and we don't, you know, like, so same with me with it's so many aspects of my life, and I just think isn't it beautiful to be really curious to the unfolding of this experience, rather than feeling like I've determined the experience and I need to muscle it into line. The different, you know, ways in which we show up are so diametrically opposed when we come from those, you know, in those two different positions. So
Yeah, yeah.
and I guess I was probably doing the former, and now I still do the former sometimes, and I also do the latter sometimes. Do you know? Like
Yeah.
and it's more obvious when we're doing the former now because we've had a different experience of what it could be like. So there's just a thirst, like I hear in you, Debs, to always be curious, always to be open and inquiring, and knowing that that's just the lifelong path to being able to see more. And it's not even that. I think it's there's no choice in it. There is no choice in it. You're just doing that because that's what makes sense. Um, yeah, and there's a freedom in that. So I think that's right now in this moment, that's what seems to make sense, you know.
I love that there's a word that you have used a fair few times while we've been speaking, and that's curious, get curious. And I know for me, just that has been a game changer. It's like, all right, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And I think, all right, get curious about that. That is how you open the door, I think, to something else. Because very often, you know, when obstacles or whatever these things like that you describe happen to you, you know, you're there and I've got to get it right. And it's like, what is that? I've got to get it right. And for me, that has been, I have had a huge seeing of how much that was still playing out in my life. This idea that I had to get it right, even the idea that there is a right. I hadn't noticed how much that was playing out everywhere. This idea that you've got to get it right. And if you get it right, everything will work out. So if it's not working out, you are somehow getting it wrong. And then in those areas where where things were going well and I was getting it right, I had a lot of judgment. This whole right thing also had the connotation of there's a wrong. So it's like, either I'm wrong or someone else is wrong. And the huge implications of coming from that place of you need to get it right, therefore there is a right, therefore there is a wrong. So everybody is either getting it right or wrong, including you. So then I'm kind of looking, well, are they getting it right? Okay, well, I need to be more like them then because I'm getting it wrong. Oh, I'm getting it right here. Oh, that means they're getting it wrong.
Yeah. It's huge, so isn't it? You think that's one script that
Yeah.
we've got, one of thousands, millions, I don't know how many kind of program scripts we've got, because that's what we've innocently been told and shown. All the time we hear it in our language, you know, all the time people refer to, you know, they'll ask us, am I doing this right? Or what's the right thing to ask? Or it's everywhere. So of course, you know, we're absorbing that. We're taking it on without knowing we're taking it on. And then that's all that we can see. So it's just so incredible when you really think about the nuts and bolts of the system, this incredible human design. It's like, wow, how amazing. If you wanted to design something to learn to adapt to its environment, it's a pretty awesome design. The challenge is that the environment is always adapting and changing, and we as human beings are moving, you know, all the time, and we don't live how we used to live, and it's very cool to just, I think, to kind of geek out on the whole system and be like, wow, that is incredible and so powerful, and can be so misunderstood. And so that sense of you seeing even that there is this thing called right that we're talking about, and then that does that even exist, and can you be right or wrong? It's like that blows everything out of the water. It's like the right or wrong is the constriction, the accordion being,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
no right or wrong. Like there's just a whole playground out there now. It's like there isn't anything that I need to be monitoring against all the time, judging against, comparing against. It can just be out there. And then I've just got a lot less weight to carry around. And I'm going to be more curious because I'm not curious if I need to get it right. Like, I'm seriously not curious.
No, there is much more control, monitoring, being careful, and judging. A lot of judgments on all sides. You know, in a conversation, like, okay, so what's Michelle? Where is she getting it right, and what am I not doing? That she so there's a hell of a lot on all sides of judgment when we're carrying something like that. And like you say, that is one script.
There's so many.
But each one, it is also fascinating with each one that falls away, the level of freedom that is felt beneath that. You know, and I suddenly saw it, it's like, oh, oh, oh. It's like, wow, you've been doing that. And innocently, again, it comes to the place of, yeah, you hadn't noticed that you'd been doing that. But what does it, in the seeing of that, what is the possibilities that open up to you? And that again comes back to, I love that, right? Let's just get curious about and notice where you are restricted, because that's how you've been showing up there, with this idea that I can get it right or wrong, and so do other people, and it's my job to work out which, you know, which everyone is doing, so who I want to be more like and who I want to be less like.
Yeah. And there's so much of that script that is around that central character of me.
Yes, oh my gosh, yes, yeah,
Like that, the ultimate script really
yeah,
as human beings. And I think that the power of kind of, for me, that's like the mother script, you know, like it's the part of it. And I kind of think of it like the trunk of a tree. Do you know, like if we get the trunk of the tree and we see that, we get more curious about that, this whole me thing, which is
yeah,
kind of weird in itself, but really kind of get that, then a lot of the branches of the tree, you know, they don't feel as solid, they don't feel as weighty, because they're all just connected to this big trunk, this big central
yeah,
trunk. And I think it's yeah, it's joyful to be able to really get curious about, so who am I in all of this? Like what the heck am I doing? Because so much of that comparison is on behalf of someone.
yeah.
It seems to be on behalf of this person, but who the heck is that? So that's an interesting place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really fascinating. And yeah, seeing that, it's really beautiful, because it doesn't mean that you have to go anywhere or change this me. But again, it is like that whole, you're coming from a whole different place. When there is the, yeah, oh yeah, me, who is me, when you realize that all of that is the same, all of that is made up too. You know, yeah, that's just as made up as any other script, that's just as made up as anything. Then again, it frees you to play that role, to be me, to do it from a very, very, coming from a very different place. But it's still, and that, yeah, that is the fun of it, isn't it? So what do I like then? But once you kind of realize, yeah, again, it's coming from a freedom, it doesn't really matter. But I can see that I have preferences, I can see that, and I can follow those, that's perfectly okay. But it's coming from, like you say, seeing that what the trunk of the tree is and
Mm.
what these branches are, and it's like, okay, so that's what they are. And it is almost like, I can't think of an analogy that describes it, but when the basis of it, you're just dealing with something completely different to what it used to look like.
Yeah. I, I sort of think of it as kind of holding it loosely, because you can see
Mm,
it. Before we couldn't see it, but not holding it literally. So it's not the tight grip of the, oh, I go around the tree and the, you know, the big, like, I don't know, I think of a big oak tree and I can't even get my hands around it, it's so big, and it's like, but I'm trying and I'm kind of efforting. This is just kind of seeing it and being able to kind of be aware of this thing, but it doesn't feel so solid and so rigid. And I think that that in itself um, is enables us to have a more peaceful experience, because there is a transience to who we are.
yeah.
One of my clients, they talk about, you know, that they're able to be more like a chameleon in a way, because they're not
Mm,
forcing themselves to show up in the way they think they need to be. It's like, well, I'm just going to see what makes sense, and they feel a little bit like there are some patterns that turn up. That's kind of just normal, you know,
yeah,
like. But there's also some stuff that's a bit different, and it's like, isn't that great to be able to see? There's so much, you know. I think it's Walt Whitman says, you know, we contain multitudes. It's like, yeah, we do. It's like, how beautiful is that? You're not singular. You're absolutely, you know, have this incredible, we talk about on the program, the pure potential that's available. And you can call upon that really responsively, for how the environment looks to you in that moment.
Mm.
A very cool thing. If you think about that from an evolutionary biology perspective, it's like great, because if I need to adapt to an environment, I want to have a kit bag, that I can pull from, not just like one tool that's available to me
Mm.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, it opens the idea that we can use everything to our advantage,
Mhm.
because it's like we can have this appearance of me is I am this and this is it. And in some moments that's quite handy. And in another moment, exactly like you say, that whole adaptive thing, oh yeah, that rigid me just isn't helpful here. Okay, well, it can be just gone then, and we can bring it back when we need it, lose it when we don't need it, and be totally adaptive to the moment that is in front of us and whatever that requires. And it's like, yeah, that is a really truly beautiful place to come from, because sometimes it's really nice to just be like, yeah, I'm me, this is who I am, this is what I do. And then in another moment that is heavy and unuseful and not a good idea. But it's really, really great to kind of see that, yeah, the chameleon, it's just like, okay, well, if you absolutely don't need it in this moment, don't have it in this moment. If you want it, it's totally there. If you don't want it, don't need it, it's totally gone. It's a really beautiful place.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like you said, that the possibility, the formless possibility of anything exists through us from that.
Yeah. And I think then it transitions into that state of really being in the world versus the doing, because the doing is just the
Yeah.
consequence of the being. And so there doesn't need to be even the thought process around the do I, don't I, should I? No. I'm just, and I'm just, an adaptation is happening naturally through me. Life is living us. We are life. So, I think then we're really in that state of flow with that incredible life, richness of life coming through us in any moment.
Mhm.
And that's just there.
Yeah. And I really, really love the absolute practicality of it. The
Mhm.
way that we've had a lovely conversation. I know it goes, and definitely when we get into these spaces, something it touches something in me. But one of the things, when I first sort of started looking in this direction and getting curious in this way, I had real life problems, a little bit like you, with your child and feeling overwhelmed and all this. I had 3 children that I needed to. They were damaged. All of this kind of thing. It's like that, and some real stuff that needed, bills and where I'm going to live and all of this kind of thing out in the world. And one of the things that I really, really love is we can go to these depths and talk about formulas and talk about all of this, but an understanding and a knowing really comes into its own when we are in those positions. It's kind of like, yeah, from curiosity, a clear mind. It's amazing what we can create, what we can do in the toughest, the most challenging, the whatever circumstances.
Yeah, so I mean, to bring that to life, Debs, the journey that we go on with people, the pure potential journey, we start with what are the challenges right now in now, and the types of things that come up, workload. I don't think there's anyone in a kind of traditional environment that doesn't say workload's not a challenge. Responsibility. Work with a lot of head teachers or trust leaders, and
Mhm.
responsibility is a massive challenge for them. It's on me, it's my shoulders, all these kids' lives, their mental health, all of it, the
Yeah,
SATs results or the GCSEs and A levels. This sense of relationships, so challenging people, challenging parents, challenging teachers, challenging colleagues, whatever that might look like. Real world situations, budgets. We don't have the money. We're in deficit. So super practical. And it feels, I really get what you're saying, and lots of people will absolutely resonate in terms of it feels like what we're talking about is very disconnected from those real world
mhm,
situations. But if you put those up front and then you start to see what creates those, like our experience of those situations, and you travel with people along that journey, the opportunity for them to have a very different experience of that same challenge is opened up. And if you could have a different experience of workload or volume of work, or the pace of work, what could that be? I mean, it feels like, how can this conversation help that? But I think for me, my passion is absolutely around this being super accessible for people, and therefore super practical, because I think that we as a community, we love these conversations, and we benefit from those conversations, because then we get to apply that in a practical manner. And so to have a conversation with someone who hasn't necessarily been on this kind of journey and start from a really practical place, I think just it increasingly makes sense. And I think we're so there is no world, there's no person in the world that this is not relevant to, because it's universal, and I think that's why I think it's so beautiful. So I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have one last question that I would like to ask you, and we can end on that. So, and take this where you will. What do you think the purpose is of us being here, having a human experience?
Wow. Oh my gosh, it's such a great question. I mean, it's the ultimate question for us as human beings.
And have fun with it.
The ultimate. I mean, I think that fundamentally there is no answer to that question. I mean, I think we know that. I think our imagination has a field day, and comes up with a whole host of different things. But ultimately, I truly believe that the externals that we talked about, the form, the circumstances, come and they go, they shift and they shake, and they look different to all of us. But fundamentally, what are they doing? They're giving us the opportunity to see more of who really are we. How does this being human really operate? And I think that that's the ultimate of this time that we have to be a human being, to really get closer to understanding, who we are. I think it's every single person has that opportunity then. There isn't anything, that any situation or circumstance that prevents someone from getting curious about that, and doesn't mean that we all will, or that we'll even share that view. But for me, that's very. It just feels increasingly the case, and I think it's such a blessing to be able to experience that, or at least know that that's the never-ending journey of being a human, to explore. So I don't know, Deb, is the honest answer. Is that okay?
I don't. I think we've dropped the whole "there's a right and wrong" here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't kind of putting, has she got the right answer there? Or
I'll cross you.
take that. Again, I think it's just it's the curiosity, isn't it? And it is lovely to hear different people's views and how they express that, because I just think, and some things we resonate with and some things we don't. And I just think that is beautiful. So no, thank you. I think that was an amazing answer. And thank you for being an incredible guest today. That was lovely. I have really, really enjoyed our conversation. So you did talk about a program that you do and some things. If anyone wants to know more about you or anything like that, where would be a good place to find you, to inquire about anything you're up to?
Yeah. So probably our website, which is pure-potential.org.
Oh, well, again, thank you so much for a beautiful
Lovely hanging out with you.
conversation. Yeah, it was incredible. Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.